There's a secret that the top 1% of naturally attractive people understand instinctively, and it has nothing to do with looks, money, or status. It's a psychological principle so powerful that once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. In successful relationships, in marketing, in the people who seem to effortlessly captivate others. This principle is called the Zeigarnik Effect, named after Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who discovered that our brains are literally wired to obsess over incomplete experiences. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to use this psychological trigger to make someone think about you constantly, even when you're not in the same room. What you're about to learn isn't manipulation. It's understanding the fundamental architecture of human desire. Let me tell you about Sarah, a client who came to me frustrated because men would show initial interest but then drift away. She was attractive, successful, intelligent, yet something wasn't clicking. Then I taught her one simple principle, and within weeks, 3 different men were pursuing her intensely. What changed? She stopped trying to complete every interaction. See, most people make a critical mistake in dating. They try to answer every question, finish every story, and wrap up every conversation in a neat little bow. But here's what neuroscience reveals. The human brain is hardwired to complete unfinished patterns. When something is left incomplete, your mind literally cannot let it go. The Zeigarnik Effect was discovered in the 1920s when Bluma Zeigarnik noticed something peculiar about waiters in a Viennese cafe. They could remember complex unpaid orders with perfect accuracy, but the moment the bill was settled, they forgot everything. The incomplete task, the unpaid bill, created a mental tension that kept the information active in their minds. Once completed, the brain released it. This same mechanism governs attraction more than we realize. When you leave someone with an incomplete experience, an unfinished story, an unanswered question, a moment interrupted, you create what psychologists call cognitive tension. That tension demands resolution, and resolution requires thinking about you. This is why cliffhangers work in television, why To Be Continued keeps us coming back, and why the most attractive people often seem just slightly out of reach. Now, here's where it gets fascinating for dating and attraction. When you're with someone you're interested in and the conversation is flowing beautifully, every instinct tells you to stay, to extend the moment, to give them your complete story. But that's exactly when you should leave. Not abruptly or rudely, but elegantly, right at the peak of engagement. Tell them you have somewhere to be. Leave a story half finished with, "I'll tell you the rest next time." End the date while they're still laughing, still wanting more. What you're doing is creating an incomplete gestalt in their mind. Their brain will literally work to complete the pattern, and the only way to do that is by thinking about you. This isn't playing games. It's understanding that value is often perceived through scarcity and incompleteness. Let me give you a practical technique. When texting someone you're dating, try what I call the interrupted pattern. Share something intriguing, something that hooks their curiosity, but then don't complete it in that message. For example, "You know what's funny? I just realized we have something really specific in common. It's kind of weird, actually." Then change the subject or let the conversation naturally end. Their mind will circle back to that incomplete loop repeatedly. They'll wonder what you meant. They'll construct possibilities. Most importantly, they'll think about you, not because you demanded it, but because their own psychology demands completion. Compare this to the person who texts paragraphs, explains everything, and leaves no mystery. Who seems more intriguing? The human mind is drawn toward gaps it needs to fill. Psychology goes even deeper. Researcher Ari Kruglansky found that incomplete goals create what he calls goal priming. The unfinished objective stays active in your subconscious, influencing your behavior and attention. When you leave someone with an incomplete experience of you, you become an unfinished goal in their mind. Their subconscious will prime them to notice things that relate to you, to think about you when something reminds them of your interrupted conversation, to feel compelled to reach out. This is why the person who seems busy, who has boundaries, who doesn't overshare, becomes more attractive. They're unknowingly leveraging the Zeigarnik Effect. Meanwhile, the person who's always available, who reveals everything immediately, creates complete gestalts, finished patterns that the brain can file away and forget. Here's a powerful technique for in-person attraction, the strategic pause. When you're sharing something about yourself, your passions, your story, your experiences, pause mid-thought, look at them with intention, and say, actually, I don't usually share this with people. Then decide whether to continue or redirect. What you've just done is created a dual incompletion, both the story itself and the boundary that marks them as potentially special enough to hear more. Their mind will obsess over both loops. This works because it combines the Zeigarnik Effect with social proof scarcity, the implication that not everyone gets access to your complete story. You become a puzzle they want to solve, a story they need to finish. The key is authenticity. This isn't about lying or manipulation, but about recognizing that you don't owe anyone your complete narrative immediately. Now let's talk about something most dating advice gets catastrophically wrong, the myth of closure. We're told that good communication means completing every discussion, resolving every tension, answering every question. But relationships that maintain some mystery, some incompleteness, some tension, actually sustain desire longer. Psychologist Esther Perel's research on long-term desire reveals that couples who maintain separateness, who don't completely merge identities, who leave room for curiosity about each other, maintain attraction for decades. The Zeigarnik Effect explains why. When you've completely downloaded your entire personality, history, and daily routine to someone, there's nothing left for their mind to work on. You've become a completed file. Contrast this with maintaining a private inner world, having experiences they're not part of, being someone they're still discovering. The incompleteness sustains the psychological tension that fuels attraction. Let me share the technique that creates the most powerful effect. The callback incomplete. This works in stages. First, mention something intriguing but don't expand on it. Let days pass. Then when you're together again, reference it casually as if assuming they remember, but still don't complete it fully. Oh, by the way, about that thing I mentioned, actually it's complicated. I'll explain when we have more time. What you're doing is refreshing the incomplete loop while adding layers. Each refresh deepens the cognitive investment. Their brain has now spent days processing the original incomplete pattern, and you've just reinforced it without resolution. This creates what's called a commitment escalation. They've invested mental energy, and the psychology of sunk costs means they're even more motivated to reach completion. You're becoming a mystery they're determined to solve, and mysteriously, that determination feels exactly like intense attraction. Here's where most people panic and sabotage themselves. After creating incompleteness, they get anxious. What if they lose interest? What if they think I'm playing games? So they overcompensate by explaining everything, texting first, being overly available. This immediately destroys the Zeigarnik Effect. You've completed the pattern, resolved the tension, and released their brain from its obsessive loop. Instead, you need to trust the psychology and sit with the discomfort. When you leave something incomplete, you will feel tension too. That's the effect working. Your brain also wants completion. But if you can tolerate that discomfort and maintain the incompleteness, you create a psychological dynamic where both of you are drawn toward resolution. The difference is, you understand what's happening while they're experiencing it instinctively. That awareness is your power. Let's address the ethics because this matters. Is using the Zeigarnik Effect manipulation? Only if your intent is to control or deceive. But if you're using it to create genuine intrigue around your authentic self, it's simply strategic communication. Think about it. The most captivating books, films, and speakers all use this principle. They reveal strategically, create anticipation, and understand that how information unfolds matters as much as the information itself. In dating, this means being genuine but selective, open but boundaried, engaging but not desperate to impress. It means understanding that your value isn't proven by revealing everything immediately, but by being someone worth discovering over time. The Zeigarnik Effect, used ethically, simply ensures you're not undermining your own attractiveness by over-explaining, over-pursuing, or over-sharing before appropriate intimacy develops. Here's your action plan to implement this starting today. First, in your next conversation with someone you're attracted to, deliberately leave one story unfinished. That reminds me of this crazy thing that happened. You know what? I'll save that for next time we talk. Second, end your next date or call while it's still going well, not after it's run its course. I've really enjoyed this, but I need to get going. Exit at the peak. Third, in texting, practice the pause. Before hitting send on a long explanatory message, ask yourself, could I say less and create more curiosity? Finally, cultivate genuine mystery by actually having a life, hobbies, passions, experiences that aren't centered on impressing someone. The most powerful Zeigarnik effect happens when the incompleteness is real, when you genuinely are someone with depth that takes time to discover. Remember, attraction isn't about tricks. It's about understanding psychology and aligning your behavior with how desire actually works. The people who understand this principle transform their dating lives not by becoming someone different, but by presenting their authentic selves more strategically. They stop over-functioning, over-explaining, and over-pursuing. They let the natural psychology of desire work in their favor. They become unforgettable not because they force themselves into someone's mind, but because they understand how to create the cognitive conditions where obsessive thinking naturally occurs. The Zeigarnik effect is everywhere once you see it. In the person you can't stop thinking about, in the show you binge because of cliffhangers and the questions that keep you awake at night. Now you know the psychology behind it, and more importantly, you know how to become that incomplete pattern in someone else's mind. Use this knowledge wisely, use it ethically, and watch as the people you're interested in find themselves unable to stop thinking about you. That's not manipulation, that's mastery of human psychology.